Hello and welcome to Kent Tonight Live on KMTV. I'm Kristen Hawthorne and here are your top stories on Wednesday the 3rd of December. A public health crisis. Prime Minister, MPs and locals call for urgent help as Tunbridge Wells water shortages continue.
I too have heard South East Water say, as he rightly says, actually Sunday into Monday, Monday into Tuesday and Tuesday into Wednesday, that they were sorting it and they still haven't sorted and there's really serious consequences.
Housing headaches. Kent homes now costing 8 times local wages.
It was just, I'm a cash buyer and it wasn't, it was quite a lot of money and I still couldn't find a house.
And Christmas come early. We're at Stroud's year-round festive store to find out when people really get into the holiday spirit.
I come here actually quite often if I'm at work and I'm feeling a bit, then I just come in here and I absolutely love it.
But first, our top story this evening. It's now the 5th day without water for tens of thousands of residents in Tunbridge Wells, in a situation the Prime Minister has described as shocking. A recurring chemical issue at the Pembury treatment plant has left supplies undrinkable, prompting authorities to declare what they're calling a public health crisis. Thousands of residents have been told that they must boil their tap water for the next 10 days as engineers work to resolve the problem. Our reporter Chloe Brewster is live in Tunbridge Wells with the latest on the disruption. Chloe, can you talk us through the last few days then?
So it's been chaos here. I'm currently at Tunbridge Wells Sports Centre and there are at the moment cars pouring in trying to collect those bottles of water. In the Commons earlier, leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, called the situation a public health emergency.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was in Royal Tunbridge Wells, where tens of thousands of people have had no water for 5 days. This is now a public health emergency, and shockingly, it's the second time in just 3 years when South East Water have let down the people of Tunbridge Wells badly. Parents are queuing up for bottled water for their kids. Pensioners are relying on neighbours to fetch some water for them. Businesses have closed down. Schools and GPs have been forced to shut. South East Water said it would be sorted on Monday, then yesterday, and today it still hasn't been sorted. So will the Prime Minister convene COBRA? Does he agree that it's time for him to get a grip of this crisis so it is sorted?
Well, can I thank him for raising this really important issue? And it is shocking for all the reasons he set out. And I too have heard South East Water say, as he rightly says, actually Sunday into Monday, Monday into Tuesday and Tuesday into Wednesday, that they were sorting it and they still haven't sorted and there's really serious consequences. And we are bearing down on that as he would expect because it's such a serious issue.
Sir Ed Davey.
Prime Minister's reply and the actions of the Water Minister, but I do think the government will need to do more because South East Water have failed so badly.
Chloe, we've seen the reaction there in Parliament, but what is the public reaction to this?
Well, there's 24,000 people who've been unable to take a shower, unable just to put the kettle on. It must be incredibly frustrating for all of those people. And Neil Hudson, the head of water quality, actually spoke to us earlier and he apologised and he said they're unsure about what caused the water quality issue.
I'd like to start off by apologising, obviously, to all the customers in Tunbridge Wells and the surrounding area for the issues that have been ongoing from the weekend. Obviously, we appreciate the difficulties that's causing to them and the impact it's having on their just day-to-day lives. And I guess to let you know that obviously our guys are out there working as hard as we can to try and resolve the issue. So we've had issues at the treatment works at Pembury, which has caused the treatment works to shut down. What we're doing now, and we've been unable to provide a wholesome supply consistently. All water we've supplied up to this point has been completely safe to drink. What we're doing now and why we put this boil water notice on is to allow us to run the treatment works consistently. The water will still be going through a full treatment process. However, there's potential issues with our disinfection process at the very end, which is why we're asking customers to boil water before they use it for drinking, cooking, brushing teeth, etc. And the main reason for this is to allow people to restore supplies for sanitation purposes, so they can flush toilets, so they can shower, hand washing. So effectively, so you can get back to that side from the public health point of view.
People here are really clearly frustrated. Schools have been unable to open, businesses are losing out on money. And I actually spoke to a pub landlord on Monday who told us that she was losing thousands. She's had to cancel Christmas events, and it's not going well for the people of Tunbridge Wells. We actually spoke to the leader of the Borough Council here to see what he thought.
I've seen some pretty upsetting scenes where I've seen some of our residents, in the 80s and 90s, walking miles to bottled water stations, and they, just to carry something home because they had nothing. I've seen mums with newborn babies that hadn't got water. We've had care homes that, despite being on the priority list, haven't had their special deliveries. So, it's quite upsetting, because when you really boil it down, pardon the pun, not intended, water is the essence of life.
And we will be hearing more from Chloe about that later in the show. But now, a second man has been arrested as detectives continue to investigate the fatal stabbing of a 19-year-old in Chatham. The victim was found with stab wounds inside of a property on Thorold Road early yesterday morning, and a man in his 30s was detained shortly afterwards. Police have now taken an 18-year-old from London into custody as part of the inquiry, with searches and forensic work at the scene still ongoing. Megan Shaw has been following the investigation and joins me now. Megan, can you give me the updates that have come out today about this?
Of course. So, as you mentioned there, a second man has been arrested after a 19-year-old was stabbed in Chatham in the early hours of yesterday morning. That man arrested in connection is an 18-year-old from Greenford in London, and of course investigations are still ongoing.
And for anyone who missed yesterday's broadcast, we actually sent one of our reporters down to find out a bit about public reaction and stuff. What actually did happen yesterday? What did we find out then?
So Kent Police were called just after 3 a.m. on Tuesday morning following reports of a serious assault involving a knife. It was then confirmed that a 19-year-old had died at the scene from stab wound injuries after being treated by paramedics. Shortly afterwards, a 32-year-old man from Chatham was arrested on suspicion of murder. A police cordon has been put in place yesterday, which closed the street and adjacent alleyway as a murder investigation was launched.
All right, thank you, Megan. The full details of that broadcast will be found on our website if you missed it. But next, the county's CCTV coverage is under scrutiny tonight as dozens of cameras across Ashford have reportedly been out of action for months, including key locations across the town. It comes as Ashford Borough Council prepares to enter a new shared service with Swale, a move the council leader says could save around £300,000. The proposal has faced some opposition, with nearly 150 people signing a petition against relocating the service. A spokesperson for the council says they refute the claims being circulated, and some believe that concerns are being spread maliciously. Now, the scheme to build the Lower Thames crossing connecting Kent and Essex will now cost taxpayers more than £3 billion. The money from taxpayers is being used to de-risk the £11 billion project, allowing digging under the River Thames to begin in 2028, following National Highways' purchase of a new tunnelling machine. Director of Transport Action Network, Chris Todd, says the crossing will leave those cheering on the scheme shortchanged. However, Executive Director of LTC, Matt Palmer, says the infrastructure will deliver jobs, trade opportunities and relieve pressure on a road which sees around 190,000 vehicles a day. The new road is planned to open in the early 2030s. Now, tributes have been pouring in for former Tunbridge and Malling MP Sir John Stanley, who has died at the age of 82. Sir John served as a Conservative MP for the constituency for 41 years between 1974 and 2015. He was also Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's parliamentary private secretary. His successor, Tom Tugendhat, has led the tributes, saying Sir John served with distinction. Also paying their respects is Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council leader Matt Botton, who we spoke to earlier today.
The story I was told by a former councillor once was in Hadlow, little village of Hadlow, just north of Tunbridge, and he went to help them with their election campaign. And he only had about half an hour or so. And So John was quite insistent that he go to certain properties and speak to certain people. And it's sort of the team with him were asking why. And he said, look, I'll demonstrate why. And it turns out that he'd remembered that about 15 years previously, he had helped get the driving license back for that particular person. He had a wonderful memory for people, a wonderful memory for places, and a real commitment to ensuring that that reputation that he built up lasted long beyond he'd helped people. I can remember a former colleague of mine saying you couldn't walk down a street in Tunbridge and Morlin without meeting someone who had been helped by John Stanley.
Well, now, unfortunately, it's time for a short break, but don't go anywhere as we have a chat with our medical expert, Dr. Julian Spinks, about the ongoing water crisis in Tunbridge Wells, as well as finding out about the latest fallout from the COVID inquiry. We'll also be following up with Chloe again about the updates that are happening in Tunbridge Wells, the weather as well, and we will be speaking with Lottie Mason, who has all the latest sports news from across the county, coming up next on Kent Tonight. So all of that and more, don't go anywhere. Plenty packed show, so we'll be excited to see you then. Bye-bye. Hello and welcome back to Kent Tonight live here on KMTV. Now, to take more on the ongoing water crisis in Tunbridge Wells, plus other medical headlines from across the county, here's our resident health expert, Dr. Julian Spinks. All right, Julian, so thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, we're talking about Tunbridge Wells, obviously, and the water contamination that's happening over there. What are some of the dangers that a person can face when ingesting these chemicals, and can you explain a bit about what they are?
Yes, these are called coagulants. And whilst I'm not a water expert, I do understand what they do, and that is to take very small particles of contamination and make them clump together, and then that can be filtered out. But it does require the right amount of the chemical to be in there. A lot of them are aluminium salts, so they're aluminium based or iron based. And both of those, if they're at high levels, can make people unwell, and so they have to be maintained at the right level. However, also, if they're not there at the right level, the filtering of the contaminants won't happen properly, and you may have a situation where more bacteria get into the water. And obviously with the initial thing, they were concerned both with the chemical levels and bacteria. Now they're looking and saying, actually, the chemicals are okay to use in bathing and so on, but you shouldn't be drinking it.
And I mean, what if they do drink it? What if, you know, you can't boil the water, or you don't have the electricity, maybe you don't have a kettle? What will happen if people drink this? I
think it's very important that they do boil it, because at the moment they can't guarantee there isn't bacterial contamination. And you have to remember, when they restore a supply, they've got to flush all the water through the pipes that's been there from before. So it'll never be instantaneous when they switch things back on. I think if you can't boil it, then you need to look at bottled water, and they are supplying that for drinking, and so that's one way around. The additional health effects are because you can't wash, because you can't wash your clothes. We've got GP surgeries that are shut because we need water. We need to be able to decontaminate and wash our hands and so on. If you can't do that, you can't stay open.
And of course, as a GP, does this concern you about maybe the amount of people who are going to have to go to the GP for maybe health things that they've had to deal with because of the water quality in Tunbridge Wells?
I would hope that if they follow the advice they've been given, that it's going to reduce the risk of that sort of thing. It's a bigger problem for those practices in that area if they can't actually open, because that causes all sorts of problems, because it's not just things related to water, it's all the other diseases they can't treat. So it's something that is a major impact. And of course it hits the young and the elderly, the people who can't get out and do things, much harder than other people.
Certainly, but we will follow that as it continues, and hopefully something will be, not too many people will be going to the GP. We'll move on to the COVID inquiry now. So it's been found that if the nationwide lockdown took place 2 weeks earlier, that 23,000 lives could have potentially been saved. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, looking at the results of the inquiry, what is interesting is that they've not said lockdown was a bad thing in itself, and really overall the right decisions were made, but often too late. And so the initial lockdown, if they'd looked at what was happening internationally, particularly places like Italy, where their health system was collapsing in northern Italy, they should have made the decision earlier, but they were overconfident. They were misled by the fact that there wasn't a lot of testing and it was technically more difficult, so they didn't know how many people in the UK had it. But I think an earlier lockdown probably would have resulted in a shorter lockdown and less impact on people. And likewise, the same thing happened with the second lockdown. They opened the UK up too soon, and again they were a couple of weeks too late putting that second lockdown in place, and it meant that you had to have a longer lockdown than you would have had.
And how do you, in your opinion, with the handling of the COVID inquiry, what sort of fallout have you seen on the patients that you talk with?
Well, some patients are very upset. Because of course they then caught COVID, maybe got long COVID and so on, or have lost relatives. There was this big problem with people being discharged from hospital, not tested, going into nursing homes, taking COVID out to that, and you then had an outbreak, and with those elderly people who were more likely to die. So, you know, there's a degree of anger over it, but I think it's important that the inquiry is all about learning how to do it better next time, rather than just pointing the finger as to what happened before.
I suppose a bit of a silver lining to it then. So In regards to something else then I want to get your opinion on just quite quickly, the Health Secretary Wes Streeting described the British Medical Association as acting like moaning minis in opposition to the rollout of online GP appointment booking. Can I get quickly your thoughts on that?
Yes, a lot of us have done it. However, it has major impacts. For example, having to reduce the number of appointments that are available so doctors can answer all those online queries. And I think it's unpleasant to be called a moaning mini when in reality what we're trying to do is introduce something safely that is good for patients and good for practices.
Fabulous, Julian. Well, thank you so much for asking those questions, answering those questions, and we'll speak with you next week. Now it's time to catch up on all the latest sports news from across the county with Lottie Mason.
Sittingbourne have been sent into the Isthmian South East playoffs with their 5th successive victory. On Tuesday night, Father Derek Asamoah equalised against Hazzocks and son Sean Asamoah scored the winner of a 2-1 home victory, which sent them up to 5th place. Sittingbourne manager Rhys Prestage said the father-son duo are very different in the way they play, but Sean has been really good and adds a little something different to what we've already got. Sittingbourne will play Herne Bay this Saturday. Gillingham boss Gareth Ainsworth has commented on his return to the touchline last Saturday as the Gills drew with Shrewsbury. The Gillingham boss remarked that to be on the touchline again is where I belong, and that it's what I want to do, despite some stick from Shrewsbury fans. Ainsworth left the Shropshire Football Club at the end of last season to take on a 2-year project at Gillingham. Of being back, he said, I know the fans are with us. The players certainly fight for me, and I'm loving it as manager. Meanwhile, Sheppey United will be put to the test this weekend after 8 games without defeat, following last Saturday's 1-1 draw at Ashford, with Archie Johnson scoring the equaliser. Manager Kevin Watson says of the Ites, they had a lot of success as a club last season, so they have momentum, and that winning is familiar to them. Last season's beaten FA Vase finalists are just 4 points off top spot after being promoted last summer. Sheppey United will be heading to Whiteleaf this weekend, hoping to secure another win. And lastly, Hythe Town manager Darren Beale remains on the market to strengthen his squad. The first name through the door was Rory Deacon, appointed player assistant manager, and he's been followed by Kai Garrett, Mo Kamara and Monty Saunders. Kamara has joined from Rains Park Vale, and Saunders is a dual registration signing from Faversham. Darren Beale says of the new additions, I've worked with Kai and Deeks all of last season at Ramsgate, and I've worked with Mo before.
And of course, don't forget you can keep up to date with all our latest stories across Kent by logging on to our website kmtv.co.uk. There you'll find all reports, including this one.
Through a Freedom of Information request, Kent Online found that £100,000 has been spent on repairs for the Hawkenbury Bridge over the past 5 years. Repairs that locals say could be prevented through a reduced speed limit or traffic calming measures. The Hawkenbury pub has been directly affected, with its owner, Jonathan Woodbridge, saying he's losing an estimated £5,000 a week in trade due to the continued road closures and ongoing speeding issues.
Virtually all of the damage is caused by motor cars travelling too fast, not lorries, not vans. The cost to the economy, the ball figures here are nothing compared to what it's actually costing everybody else, including us because we're closed. My own view is this could have been prevented in its totality, but this is actually scratching the surface in terms of what the true cost is.
During the summer, the pub faced a further blow to trade when a truck crashed into the front of the building. This incident prompted a petition for a reduced speed limit due to serious concerns over safety. Data shows that over the past 5 years, 94% of the repairs have been paid for by the taxpayer, leaving just 6% being covered by drivers responsible for the damage. In response to this data, a spokesperson for Kent County Council has said that repairs to Hawkenbury Bridge are essential for safety and that it seeks to recover costs from drivers responsible for damage, working with police to identify them. The council says both Headcorn and Staplehurst have listed the bridge as a priority, and while options like traffic lights have been explored, physical constraints have made smaller fixes unfeasible, though the site will continue to be reviewed. The Mayor of Maidstone Council gave me his perspective on the issue.
Unfortunately, the vast majority of traders, whether they're in services, products, businesses, artisan labourers, from electricians to plumbers, are all suffering from traffic chaos these days. And the trouble is, they're suffering as businesses. Their margins are being hit. They've got increased costs. They've got fewer customers spending less. So everybody's being affected by their margins.
With the burden falling on taxpayers and businesses, and as calls for action grow louder, those affected are hoping that the worst is now behind them. But with the Christmas season well underway, many have fears that travel far beyond the road. Kristen Hawthorne for KMTV.
And of course, we are well into December now. It's the 3rd of December, which means that we may be seeing some snow later in the month. And I've been told that it's been very, very cold today for the people that were out speaking to the public. But let's see what it's like for the rest of the week as it's time for the weather. Tonight across Kent then we'll see a partly cloudy evening with highs of 9 degrees in Dover and lows of 7 degrees across the rest of the county. 8 degrees then across the entire county tomorrow morning with wind speeds of 12 to 18 there over in Dover. And then 7 across the board as well into tomorrow afternoon with partly cloudy skies as well. Wind speeds lowering down to 8 and 6. Then on Friday 9 degrees with rain. Saturday, rain again, 12 degrees, but warming up a bit on Sunday with partly cloudy skies, 13 degrees. But of course, stay with us now after the break as we will be taking a look at our top story again about the water shortages, the water problems over in Tunbridge Wells. All of that and more to come. See you then. Well, hello and welcome back to Kent Tonight Live here on KMTV. In case you missed it, here are our top stories on Wednesday, the 3rd of December. A public health crisis. Prime Minister, MPs and locals call for urgent help as Tunbridge Wells water shortages continue. Housing headaches. Kent homes now costing 8 times local wages. And has Christmas come early? We're at Stroud's year-round festive store to find out when people really get into the holiday spirit. But first, a look back at our top story this evening. It's now the 5th day without water for tens of thousands of residents in Tunbridge Wells, in a situation the Prime Minister has described as shocking. A recurring chemical issue at the Pembury treatment plant has left supplies undrinkable, prompting authorities to declare what they're calling a public health crisis. Thousands of residents have been told they must boil their tap water for the next 10 days as engineers work to resolve the problem. Our reporter Chloe Brewster is live in Tunbridge Wells with the latest on the disruption.
So where one of the water distribution sites is, if you can just see behind me there, traffic is coming in extremely quickly. People are desperate to get some water. Now it's the 5th day of this chaos and it's not looking like it's ending anytime soon. One of our reporters, Maisie, was here in Tunbridge Wells earlier talking to people about it.
Joy to the wells, but the wells are empty. Thousands of properties across Tunbridge Wells now hit day 5 of no running water. A bad batch of chemicals caused Pembury's treatment work site to shut down on Saturday, and now around 24,000 residents are still without water in Tunbridge Wells. Residents and businesses were told this morning that supplies would be returned, but they will have to boil the water before drinking.
I haven't had water since Saturday, and they kept saying, you know, and then the 3rd day it's going to be back, but no water, no bath, nothing in the toilet. I just got the big box of water this morning from my taxi driver, and I have now been using small bottles, pushing them in because I can carry them with a taxi.
I think it is absolutely diabolical, and that the bloke that works for South East Water should be fired, especially as he's taken in $400,000 a year.
Well, we didn't actually realise until we got here that there was one, and since coming here we've not been able to get a coffee or a lunch, and it's unfortunate because we did not realise. We probably wouldn't have come.
The majority of businesses in the town centre were not open, a simple sign saying sorry, not open on their door. But residents aren't the only ones frustrated about the issue.
At the moment we're in crisis management mode, so the first thing is making sure that the communications are clear from South East Water, which they're not. They're still not clear about what's going on. And then the second thing is making sure that the crisis is being managed properly. So, for instance, these toilets behind us have been put in there by the Borough Council. We pushed South East Water to put them in for days, and they haven't come in. And so the Borough Council, who've been excellent, have just taken the initiative and put them in themselves. And this means that the shops can open, because this is obviously one of the busiest shopping periods of the year. So we need to be able to get the shops open. So at the moment, it's real crisis management mode.
In the meantime, residents can access bottled water stations throughout Tunbridge Wells. Maisie Walker for KMTV, Tunbridge Wells.
Now, those are some harsh words there, but we actually spoke to the head of water quality at South East Water, Neil Hudson, who apologised and said that they're unsure what caused the water quality issue.
I'd like to start off by apologising, obviously, to all the customers in Tunbridge Wells and the surrounding area for the issues that have been ongoing from the weekend. Obviously, we appreciate the difficulties that's causing to them and the impact it's having on their just day-to-day lives. And I guess to let you know that obviously our guys are out there working as hard as we can to try and resolve the issue. So we've had issues at the treatment works at Pembury, which has caused the treatment works to shut down. What we're doing now, and we've been unable to provide a wholesome supply consistently. All water we've supplied up to this point has been completely safe to drink. What we're doing now, and why we put this boil water notice on, is to allow us to run the treatment works consistently. The water will still be going through a full treatment process. However, there's potential issues with our disinfection process at the very end, which is why we're asking customers to boil water before they use it for drinking, cooking, brushing teeth, etc. And the main reason for this is to allow people to restore supplies for sanitation purposes, so they can flush toilets, so they can shower, hand washing. So effectively, so you can get back to that side from the public health point of view.
Now, it's clear people here are frustrated. Businesses haven't been able to open, neither has schools. It's clearly not the ideal situation just in the lead up to Christmas. This has actually become a national issue. There's other members of the press here. It is extreme. It's very clearly in the headlines everywhere. It was actually brought up by Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats in Parliament earlier, and he said that this is a public health crisis.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was in Royal Tunbridge Wells, where tens of thousands of people have had no water for 5 days. This is now a public health emergency, and shockingly, it's the second time in just 3 years when South East Water have let down the people of Tunbridge Wells badly. Parents are queuing up for bottled water for their kids. Pensioners are relying on neighbours to fetch some water for them. Businesses have closed down. Schools and GPs have been forced to shut. South East Water said it would be sorted on Monday, then yesterday, and today it still hasn't been sorted. So will the Prime Minister convene COBRA? Does he agree that it's time for him to get a grip of this crisis so it is sorted?
Well, can I thank him for raising this really important issue? And it is shocking for all the reasons he's set out. And I too have heard South East Water say, as he rightly says, actually Sunday into Monday, Monday into Tuesday, and Tuesday into Wednesday, that they were sorting it, and they still haven't sorted, and there's really serious consequences. And we are bearing down on that, as he would expect, because it's such a serious issue.
Sir Ed Davey.
Prime Minister's reply and the actions of the Water Minister, but I do think the government will need to do more because South East Water have failed so badly.
The leader of Tunbridge Wells Borough Council, Ben Chapelard, told us all the issues people here have been having.
I've seen some pretty upsetting scenes where I've seen some of our residents, in the 80s and 90s, walking miles to bottled water stations, and they, just to carry something home because they had nothing. I've seen mums with newborn babies that hadn't got water. We've had care homes that, despite being on the priority list, haven't had their special deliveries. So, it's quite upsetting because when you really boil it down, pardon the pun, not intended, water is the essence of life.
That was Chloe Brewster bringing us that report, and of course Maisie Walker down at Tunbridge Wells as well. But all the details of the developing story we will be covering in our programme, so don't forget to tune in if you're affected or interested. But next, the housing crisis here in Kent and across the South East has touched thousands of families, especially as the average house price here has been more than 8 times higher than workplace earnings for the last 5 years, according to the Office for National Statistics. Our reporter Emily Sinclair has travelled around the county to hear from some of those people who've been hit the hardest.
It actually got to the point where I felt a little bit shameful because it was just, I'm a cash buyer, and it wasn't, it was quite a lot of money, and I still couldn't find a house.
Louise first tried to buy a place of her own 3 years ago. What she thought would be a pretty straightforward task turned into over a year of struggles.
I had to up and leave, take my kids and all of my stuff, and I lived in a car for about, must have been about 2 weeks. I lived on my friend's sofa. I lived at my pastor's house. And all the while, I'm trying to still find a house. It was really hard. And it put an impact on a lot of my relationships with a lot of people at the time because I was just so stressed.
House sale prices have returned to their pre-pandemic affordability levels in England and Wales. But since 2018, house prices in Kent have been higher than the England and Wales median. So what does that mean for people trying to live in our county?
If bananas had risen at the same rate as private rents nationally since 1988, a bunch would cost £13 or thereabouts in the supermarket. People have a real right to be angry and want change around this issue.
What doesn't make sense is you look around Maidstone and you see all these housing properties going up, like one massive after another. And I'm sitting here thinking, how on earth are we still in such a crisis with housing?
I put that exact question to Maidstone Borough Council's Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness, Simon Wales. How, right now, is there still a crisis with housing? What would you say to that individual?
Because it takes time for these to feed through the system. We do have 2,000 people near that on our waiting list, which is coming down. I think Maidstone Council is doing more than a lot of places in terms that we are now building. We're in a fortunate position that we do have enough finances to be able to do this, and some councils aren't quite so fortunate in terms of their finances. But we have a reasonable amount in reserves, which we are putting almost exclusively into housing.
Knowing how difficult it can be to find housing, Louise now works for Making a Difference to Maidstone, a local charity with an outreach centre, food bank and charity shop to support those in need.
I think working here and going through what I went through a few years ago kind of gives you that grace to understand what other people are going through.
As Louise turns to helping others, is there enough housing support for locals in Kent? Emily Sinclair, KMTV.
And you can catch the rest of that on Kent Tonight. On Kent Tonight special at 6:30 this evening, right here on KMTV. That'll be after the show this evening. But we will have a quick break now, but don't go anywhere, as coming up we will be talking about pantos, band anniversaries and stepping into the Christmas spirit in Strood, all in a few minutes. And as well, we're having a few minutes so you can digest all of that information that we discussed happening over in Tunbridge Wells. But if you missed anything that we discussed, we will be uploading all the information on our social medias, and you can also check out our website as well. And we'll be back here at 8 p.m. to discuss a little bit of it a bit further. But all of that and more to come. We'll see you in a few minutes. Bye-bye. Hello and welcome back to Kent Tonight Live here on KMTV. In new news, the leader of Canterbury City Council has promised an end to the one-way traffic system leading through and past the Westgate Towers. The Canterbury landmark has been surrounded by roadworks since April of this year and is scheduled to be so until the next March. The £1.5 million project hopes to turn the area into a small plaza that allows for two-way traffic to cycle through while holding space for local events. Canterbury residents have expressed concerns that the current one-way system may not clear up within the time promised. In response, Labour MP Councillor Mike Baldock has assured that he is confident that it will end by March 2026. Next, stars from Strictly Come Dancing are set to surprise audiences, bringing sparkle, surprise guests and even a dame in a dress to Canterbury from this week. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs will be gracing the Marlow Theatre stage across the holiday season. Panto royalty Ben Roddy once again will wow audiences, having won 2024's Best Dame at the Pantomime Awards. He's joined by an array of TV stars in the performance, including those from Strictly, CBeebies, and a mystery TV guest appearance. Some famous faces, including on stage, including Sarah Hadland, known for starring in BBC One's Miranda. And Gillingham-born Phil Gallagher, aka Mr. Maker, also celebrates his 7th year on the Marlow stage. Very exciting. Now, indie legends The Cooks have announced a 20th anniversary concert for their debut album, set to perform at Margate's Dreamland, Kent's biggest outdoor venue. The band from Brighton released their debut album Inside In, Inside Out back in 2006, reaching number 2 on the UK album charts. With hits like She Moves Her Own Way and Ooh La, The Cooks earned themselves a nomination for the Best Single at the Brit Awards and even an MTV Music Award. The news of the concert comes shortly after other names like hit DJ Fatboy Slim have announced performances at the venue as well. But now don't forget you can keep up to date with all our latest stories across Kent by logging onto our website kmtv.co.uk. There you'll find all the reports, including this one.
I call the Chancellor of this shutter.
It was Labour's second budget and one destined to controversy after weeks of leaks and speculation.
As you can see, the world's media has descended on Westminster for a very important day in the country's finances. And while it may be cold outside Parliament, has the reception to this tax-raising budget been frosty back in Kent?
I think it's been an absolute horror show of a budget. I mean, I thought Halloween had been and gone, but here we are again. This budget was really designed to help the shirkers and not the workers. It's the kind of budget that if you're a worker, you're paying more and getting less.
If you look at any budget, it's about trying to strike a balance. I think Rachel Reeves has done a good job with that. You know, she's found additional headroom and capacity because of the OBR projections. I'm really clear that actually we've made good progress, but there's of course always more to do.
But what does any of that actually mean now the dust has settled? Are your taxes going up? And will your local services see improvements? First of all, minimum wage is going up, meaning if you're over the age of 21, you'll be earning just shy of £26,500 a year from April. The government hopes that this will help slash youth unemployment, potentially plugging gaps in crucial council departments.
We had so many young people out of work, out of education for a long time. Being at work is good for your health as well. So increasing the minimum wage is absolutely welcome. We got so many jobs in social care sector. As a chair of APPG, I welcome that we can attract more people, take up the jobs in social care.
But there are fears businesses could be squeezed on staff costs. And that's despite cuts to business rates for 750,000 properties.
We seem to have this doom loop attitude in the UK to virtually tax the operation out of existence. Very high VAT rates, high labour rates, high excise rates, all kinds of regulation that doesn't exist in other markets. And now we've got a tourism tax coming in at the discretion of local mayors. And we're still reeling from the very high national insurance taxes, which particularly hit retail and hospitality this time last year.
So my converse to that is by giving people a wage increase, certainly minimum wage increase, they'll have more money to spend in the high streets because they are getting more money into their pockets. And what we're doing is rebalancing businesses and taxation around businesses. So small and medium-sized businesses like those cafes will get a benefit from this budget.
Then we have the big one. The two-child benefit cap has been scrapped, meaning that families on the poverty line with 3 or more children could receive additional support.
It's going to mean that 3,000 children in Gravesham are now going to be lifted out of poverty. I mean, that is just in one foul swoop, one signature can do that. I mean, that's incredible. And this is why I came into politics, to do things like this.
But there are those that say this should have happened much sooner.
And I understand, everyone understands that the government were struggling financially, but, you know, all of the charities like Child Poverty Action Group have been telling us for a long time, and my local food bank, who I work with closely, have been saying it's the #1 driver of poverty, and, you know, we have to do our absolute best to get rid of it.
And all of that doesn't even touch on gambling taxes that could raise £1 billion. Or the government extending the freeze on tax bans. That means as inflation and wages go up, more working people will end up being taxed at a higher rate. It's a bumper budget, but the winners and losers might not be quite as clear-cut as the government or the opposition makes out. Ollie Leader in Westminster.
With Christmas nearly here, I actually checked earlier and it's Christmas Eve is 3 weeks away. The people of Kent can't wait to indulge in holiday staples such as turkey, mince pies and cheese, and as well as that, crackers. However, some believe parts of the meal are underrated. But what Christmas foods do people love the most? We took to the streets of Rochester to find out what festive foods residents and shoppers crave the most.
I'm vegan, so it's not anything traditional. I do like Brussels sprouts. I know that they are a bit underrated. I think people don't really like them so much at Christmas, but I think they're really nice.
My family are French, so we have cheese boards.
I think it's got to be turkey for me, because really it's the only time of year we have it and enjoy it at Christmas. It's part of Christmas.
Yeah, the same with me, yeah.
I do like a mince pie.
Yeah.
Beef with the really thick, dripping gravy.
If you're interested, mine is a Yorkshire pudding. But while Christmas trading traditionally peaks in December, one Kent retailer operates year-round to meet consistent demand. As early seasonal spending continues to grow across the county, our reporter Naila Mohammed visited the permanent Christmas store and went into Rochester to ask residents how soon is too soon to start celebrating.
I think you can start preparing for Christmas discreetly from sort of August.
I don't like celebrating it until after my birthday, which is today. So in December is fine for me.
October.
I like it in December as well to start it, not too early.
Yeah, same with me.
12 days before.
For many across Kent, Christmas comes but once a year. But for this store in Rochester, every day is Christmas Day. Times Christmas is the UK's largest Christmas store, open 7 days a week, all year round, and attracts thousands of people just on a weekend.
From every tremendous fur you could wish for, to lights brighter than Rudolph's red nose, Time Christmas really slays it.
People want that magic, so they're coming out now and going a little bit crazier than they used to. We've had people travel from Scotland, we've had people travel from Wales, so we really are all over from people. So
the store is so enchanting that customers keep coming back for more.
I come here actually quite often if I'm at work and I'm feeling a bit, then I just come in here and I absolutely love it. Just take my time walking around, listening to the music. It's just such a good feel-good factor. I go back to the office and I feel great.
It's local to me. I live here in Medway Towns. It's just awesome, fantastic. It's seasonal. What more could you say about? You go to other shops, there's a little bit of Christmas, but this is dedicated to Christmas. Christmas is good fun.
And even the big man himself had something to say.
Been doing Santa for all these years. This is probably my best ever venue. After doing Harrods, Hamleys, all the top toy stores and garden centres and all of that. This is the cream of the pie. This is.
But what's driving all this Christmas spending? Chris Britcher, Kent Online's business editor, says the trend of earlier festive shopping is being fuelled by rising sales events.
According to the Bank of England last year, the average family spent about an extra £700 in December, which is obviously a significant spending uptick. That's about sort of 30% up on the normal months of the year. And as we all know, a lot of retailers are entirely reliant on that Christmas period to really boost their revenues and keep them ticking over during the quieter months.
And with year-round stores like Time Christmas keeping the festive spirit alive well beyond December, it's clear that for shoppers and businesses alike, the season of spending never truly melts away. Naila Mohammed for KMTV.
Lovely to see Santa out and about there in Rochester, but you've been watching Kent Tonight live on KMTV. There's more news made just for you throughout the evening at 8 p.m. So don't forget you can keep up to date with all our latest news across the county by logging on to our website kmtv.co.uk, as I said earlier. We'll see you at 8 p.m. Bye-bye.